All right, gents, I've noticed something interesting about men in their mid to late 30s and 40s. There's an interesting split of two paths that a lot of these guys seem to take. And for a little bit of context, I'm 27, but I've been posting online for 3 years about men's mental health, masculinity, mindset, personal development. And in that process, I built an audience of over 140,000. I've had tens of millions of views. I've built out a network of very successful men, and I've also worked with and spoken to a lot of men who have been really struggling across all different ages. But the single largest group that my audience is actually men in their 30s and 40s. In fact, on my YouTube audience here, over 70% of them are. And there seems to be a split that a lot of guys go into, and this is also something that I noticed in the workplace years back when I was working in the UK, both in corporate London and then also in these lower level shitty office jobs in Leeds. And I want to give equal focus to both of these because one of these paths is negative, one of them's positive, and I want you to do the same. And if you're younger watching this, I also want you to take note because I think there's a really important lesson of what to be and what not to be here. So you can probably guess what's coming. Obviously, there is grey space between this as well. There's all the people that are just getting on with their lives. But the guys that interact the most with my content that I've noticed are either incredibly supportive or they're haters. And to start off with the positive group, right? I've been very lucky in posting online to build out a network of these guys. Many of them are entrepreneurs or they're successful in their careers, they've got status, they've got wealth, they're well networked, they're in good shape. A number of them have families, etc. And these guys, they seem to have this tendency to want to build and to mentor and to contribute. And when they see younger men trying to do the same thing, I get the impression that they recognize a part of themselves in that and they want to inspire and they want to help. It's kind of like an elderly brother way of doing things. And I have these guys, they send me big voice notes and emails telling me about their journey and basically inspiring and being supporting. And it's really nice to have that when you know you've got these people in your corner. And it makes sense because around this age in the mid-30s, this is when a lot of guys, they really start to peak in their careers and they start to have families, etc. So you've got this one side, but then on the flip side, you have the haters. And this is a pattern that I've also noticed is some of the most bitter, vitriolic and bitchy is the only way I can put it. They behave like bitchy men online are also these guys in their mid-30s. And interestingly, actually, with my own channel, many of them are guys who they have public YouTube channels themselves where they've tried to build it out and they've clearly given up after setbacks. They've maybe got a few views and then they've quit, or for whatever reason, they've just not continued, right? And they come to my channel and they always project in the comments on my community posts. They get into arguments with the people that like my content as well. They're nearly always unfit looking as well. I would say that they normally look pretty weak or they're overweight, which again is not surprising. It's the very typical kind of low testosterone behavior that you would expect from these people. But regardless, right? Oh, and I did meant to add, these successful guys most of the time are very healthy and in shape, right? But regardless, it seems like there's this dichotomy for men when they get into their 30s where they either give up and they collapse and they become bitter about what they wanted to be and they haven't become, or they choose that path of inspiring others. And I did a bit of reading into this as well because I was curious to see some approaches. So I want to share with you some of the learnings that I got. So the first of these is from a developmental psychological point of view by a guy called Erickson. And what Erickson talks about is a principle of generativity versus stagnation. And he actually talks more about men when they're in their 40s to 60s. It's essentially this part of human psychological development when people can either end up questioning what they're actually contributing to society, they can feel a bit purposeless, or the opposite, they can really come into it and they contribute and they inspire and they do good things. And again, it's something that I personally believe we are all capable of either way. If we look at things from the notion of the shadow self, if you've ever read Gillette and more on the archetypes of the man as a way of understanding it. It's built off Jungian psychology. There's this idea that within us we have things like the king, we have the leader, but then we also have the coward on the other side of us. And I fully believe that most men, they have the potential within them to go either way. And they make a conscious decision at some point to either go forward, to go through the struggle, to inspire and to try and help others, or they give up and they then try to regain that sense of power and that masculine identity that they so want, but through dragging other people down, especially on younger people. And it's very much this like tall poppy punch down mentality, because obviously they have that age, I don't want to say superiority, but they have that age element. So they think that they are wiser and they know more and so on. But actually, if it's a younger person that is potentially doing things that they never did, or has achieved things that they wanted to achieve but never did, it manifests itself as bitterness, and there's still this desire to punch down. Now, the second way that I want to look at this is through evolutionary psychology as well, because men, they often come into their prime, as I mentioned, in their late 20s and their 30s, and then physically they start to decline, your T levels drop and so on. And it seems like the guys that have achieved success, if we want to frame it that way, in the dating market, they've got partners or they've got children, right? Through that lens, they have done what evolutionarily we've set out to do. But the guys that haven't, right, which often I notice this, these very bitter guys, they're usually single. They're often the guys that have the most resentment towards women as well. I was actually recently speaking to someone a little bit older than this out here in Bali who was very much like that. He clearly just had so many resentments towards women because he has no children and hasn't managed to find a partner. And I know it's a classic thing that people say, but I get the impression that a lot of guys, when they're in their 30s, they really feel that pressure. Chris Williamson spoke about this on a podcast recently, with how when he's at the weddings, the aunties are turning to him as a 37-year-old and saying, why are you not married yet? There's that societal pressure, right? And again, it seems like the men, when they get to that point, they either go through it and they lead and they achieve what is there, what they're set out to do, or again, they give up and they move into this coping mechanism and this bitterness. And that is something that they project onto others, whether it's women, whether it's other men who they feel threatened by. But again, it's like a dichotomy of ways that they can go. And these are obviously the extremes, like I mentioned. There is the middle ground. Now, the third approach is kind of similar to the first one. If we're looking at this sociologically, there's a concept known as status loss aversion, which is kind of explanatory by its name. But we all know that most men are looking for some form of status. We, as a species, Homo sapiens, are very much driven by status and our standing in the social hierarchies. And if men are in their 30s again and they haven't achieved the status that they want to set out, again, it seems like some of them retreat into this coping mechanism and try to feel that sense of status again by punching down, whereas the successful ones, they don't need to, because they've achieved that status and they've gone forward. And the overarching theme that I want to talk about here, regardless of whether you're a man in your teens watching this, in your 20s, your 30s or your 40s, and maybe you're just coming to talk about this stuff for the first time, or it's bringing your awareness to it, is, let's be honest, there is a fundamental fear for men of understanding, what am I going to become? Am I going to achieve things? Am I going to be the man that I want to be? The vast majority of men have these masculine desires. They want to be successful. They want to have a family. They want to be happy, fundamentally. Not everyone wants to be this high-flying business person. They just want financial stability or a happy wife, whatever it is. But there's a huge fear of not achieving that for a lot of men, and especially in today's day and age, where there's a huge gender divide and a lot of men are struggling with women. There's the limbic capitalist economy, as I heard it described recently, which is a really good way of putting it, where everything is just designed to hijack your limbic system, and there's a lot of distraction. And because of this, again, it causes men to feel the pressure, and they either go through it they persevere through it, they go through the suffering and the challenge, and they come out the other side stronger. Men are forged through this, right? This is what masculinity and personal development is. It's developing, it's going through the setbacks and the obstacles, or they retreat and they give up, or sorry, not even retreating, like they just quit. There are times when you need to take step backs, as I mentioned in another video, but they just completely quit. They drop off, and this is where you end up with these bitter black pill doomer types, or the haters online. And again, you've got to be honest with this. You know, if a man is in his mid-30s and his resort now is posting hate comments on social media, it's a shame. And I have compassion for those people in the same way that I have admiration for the men that do good things and they use that platform to help others. But either way, I think for the younger men here, you've got to look at this, look at these people who are slightly older as they get into their 30s, and use it as a very, very clear roadmap of the type of man that you want to be and the type of man that you don't want to be. Now look, I'm sure this video by its nature will cause some strong reactions and some strong feelings, but I do encourage you to leave your thoughts below regardless of the age that you're in, as long as you're doing it constructively and your aim is to actually help and inspire other men in their journeys. And I'm particularly curious to hear the perspectives of these guys that are slightly older and what you observed in this window. As I said, I'm 27. I'm just basing it off what I've seen of being around a lot of these people and having built a following of predominantly guys in this age group. But for the younger guys, as I said, this is a very clear indicator, at least, of the kind of path that you want to choose, right? And there's a lot of pressure for us as men, but fundamentally remember, right, there are a lot of good guys that are out there who want to help you and they want to encourage you, and do what you can to build networks with those people and be around them, whether that literally means physically moving so that you're not in the kind of community where you've got this negative tall poppy syndrome around you, the kind of content that you're consuming as well. Network with people, because I can tell you firsthand, in the time that I've done this, there are a lot of really great guys out there, and many guys today, modern men, they are understanding this new approach to masculinity where we value traditional things like being strong physically, being able to fight, being able to lead, right? Not being a pussy, essentially, but at the same time having the emotional intelligence and the wisdom and the depth and the kindness and the respect for each other that are going to make us better brothers, better fathers, better leaders of the future. But guys, I hope you found this video insightful, and I will see you in the next one.